Which hero shooter game dies next? Let's start off with Overwatch 2, because I've never seen a community be so gaslit into thinking that they actually enjoy a game, but when you actually talk to anybody who still plays Overwatch, they'll tell you that they stopped having fun with the game probably like 2 to 3 years ago. So despite the fact that Overwatch was controlling the hero shooter genre at one point and they had one of the biggest esports leagues, well, they just messed up, man. Controversy after controversy, Blizzard just kept messing up nonstop. And let's not even get started about the bait and switch that was called Overwatch 2, because, well, where's that PvE content, man? Normally I would just put Overwatch on the dead tier alongside its PvE content, but realistically speaking, the fans are just so dedicated for some reason, I don't even know why, that I just have to put it at the not unkillable tier, but at a no problem of dying anytime soon. Now let's talk about Farlight 84, because a lot of people surprisingly have never heard about this game, but it's such a popular game on both PC and mobile, and the best way to describe Farlight 84 is like a third-person Apex Legends. You get the aesthetics and the dystopian vibes of Apex Legends, but with a Fortnite PvE in a battle royale, and the game revolves around burst movements using your jetpack either vertically or horizontally, and of course you got different heroes with different abilities. My favorite one's obviously the one that looks like a duck, because why wouldn't you want to pick the duck, let's be honest here. And honestly speaking, for a game that released in 2023, so late into the battle royale genre, it's doing numbers, man. It's doing really, really well. So if you have a love-hate relationship with Apex Legends, you love the game but hate to play it, Farlight 84 seems like a really good option for you. And I don't necessarily see this game dying anytime soon, because when the game came out, the game popped off hard and it's been able to maintain its numbers too, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens, but it's also, you know, not unkillable either. So surprisingly enough, we're putting this one right next to Overwatch 2. Now we have to talk about one of the most disappointing experiences I got to play with games, and it's Rogue Company. This game unfortunately got high-resed, and that means that the game released, it got a bunch of hype, and then about 2 to 3 months later, it was dead. No one was talking about it, man. I specifically remember that Dr. Disrespect made a map on this game, they had a skin about him as well, and everyone was like super hyped when he was playing it, but then like literally everyone just abandoned it. It's a tactical shooter game that was inspired by CSGO, but it's in a third-person setting, and you have different heroes, different abilities, of course, with attack and defense style gameplay, so basically Valorant. And the problem with Rogue Company is that Valorant exists, by the way. You know, it's like, why play Rogue Company? I guess for the third-person shooter aspect, but like, that doesn't really like mix well with tactical shooters, because there's much more about aim and precision, which you don't really get that benefit when you're playing a third-person perspective. And Hi-Rez has been going through constant changes in their company, and unfortunately, if I have to put it anywhere on the tier list, it's on the life support tier, to be honest. And speaking of Valorant, when I think of hero shooter as a genre, the first thing that came to my mind back in the day was Overwatch, but now that Valorant's exploded in popularity, this is the hero shooter. This is the cream of the crop. I think Valorant is in a great spot competitively, to be honest. The skins are ridiculously expensive, but let's not even talk about that. But the gameplay is tactical, and it's snappy, and it's really fun to watch as an esport. And the way that they introduce goofy elemental hero abilities into a serious tactical shooter genre really just adds layers into the game, other than just like who can shoot the gun better. And this is coming from a guy who doesn't actively play Valorant right now. I have hours on Valorant, you know, but I really wouldn't consider myself a tryhard, nor do I want to enter that toxicity of competitive gameplay in the first place. But I do recognize a good game when I see it, and I think that Valorant right now is definitely on the unkillable tier. This thing is just not going anywhere. But you know which game actually literally went nowhere? Gundam Evolution. This thing basically died in a year. It's not to say that Gundam itself is a bad franchise, they just have a really bad track record when it comes to releasing games. But coming in to compete in the hero shooter genre, the game was actually kind of fun to play, to be honest. It was really enjoyable. But you know, it came out at the same time that Overwatch 2 was announced, so that kind of just spelled bad timing for the game. A lot of people were also calling the game pay to win. I didn't get the chance to play the game for too long myself. I played it a couple of times. But going off from what I read in the forums, the game was very pay to win. You have to unlock the units by buying them, and they cost around like $20 per unit. From what I understand, they released a patch to nerf all the free-to-play units and buff the paid units, so the game was heavily incentivizing people who were playing the game and paying for the units rather than just like the free-to-play people, so their monetization model was just really whack. And I totally understand why the game really didn't survive. Even though the marketing on the game was leaning really big on esports and competitive game, the only people who really ended up sticking around for the game were just like the casual fans who just love Gundam as a whole. But unfortunately, that wasn't enough to sustain the game, and the studio shut down Gundam Evolution literally yesterday at the time of me recording this video, so this one kind of just ranks itself. This one's very dead on the tier list. Alright, so now we have to talk about one of the other two unkillable tiers on this tier list. These hero shooters will live on until the heat death of the universe, Rainbow Six Siege. Alright, so before that, I would like to formally apologize to my friend Steven, who bought me the game for $20 back in the day, just so that we could play together, and I never really played it. I have like maybe like 10 hours total on Rainbow Six Siege. Dude, my bad. But regardless of that, this game is heavily carried by the content creator community. Of course, the game doesn't really have heroes, it has operators and they all have different abilities, and it's all about, you know, tactical hero shooting, of course. But just YouTube search Siege funny moments. This game will never die because people really just play this game and just use it as background fodder to just be able to just talk and have fun and, you know, create funny moments. But that's apart from the fact that it also has a really popular competitive esports scene. Like, this game is like multifaceted. You can use it to have fun, you can go serious on it, you can go pretty toxic and, you know, just be very degenerate with it. You know, pick your poison, do what you want with it. Yeah, but this game is technically unkillable. Even though I got caught lacking with the game, I still have to recognize the fact that it's just a huge wave of momentum when it comes to popularity, and it's really not going anywhere, man. So yeah, Rainbow Six Siege, unkillable tier. All right, let's talk about the OG hero shooter, the one that Overwatch took a good look and said, yo bro, that's actually a cool concept, mind if I borrow it? Team Fortress 2. This game has been around for so long and it still has so many players. The fan base is just rabid, it's huge, and it's dedicated. This game has so many concurrent players, it's ridiculous for a game that's over 15 years old. You have different memorable classes. Of course, I have to main the Spy because I just love playing Spy in Team Fortress 2, but unfortunately, the game has a really big issue with bots at the moment, and Valve just refuses to do anything about it, man. Valve has practically abandoned the game, but the players still get in and run community servers to play every day, and the spirit of this old-ass game really is just thriving. It really reminds me of Super Smash Bros. Melee, a game that's entirely just held up by the community at this point. This game can easily outlive every other single hero shooter in this list, but unfortunately, if Valve cannot step in and save it from the overwhelming bot problem that's going through right now, I don't feel comfortable saying that it's unkillable, so it's definitely at a no problem dying, but it's not top tier, unkillable, god tier. Alright, so now to talk about the perfect sweet spot between the fun, kooky chaos that is Team Fortress 2 and the serious competitive aspect that is Overwatch 2, alright? So we're talking about the game called Paladins. So in my humble opinion, Paladins is a lot more fun to play than Overwatch. I play the game a lot casually, and a lot of people think that it's an Overwatch knockoff because it came out 4 months after Overwatch, but it came out only 4 months after Overwatch, so that means that the game was already being developed by the time. So it's not like they copy-pasted the game, and they just happened to be coincidentally very similar to each other. But Paladins, the different heroes, the gameplay, everything about the game is just really fun. There's a lot of creativity when it comes to like the special abilities and the different characters that you have. There's actual tech skill involved when it comes to competitive gaming, but if you're like a casual player like me, you don't need to worry about that, to be honest. But unfortunately, the game is being handled by Hi-Rez, the same people that are choking out Rogue Company. Yeah, they're pouring all their resources into Smite and into Paladins. So even though the game is doing really well and it has a healthy player base, it's still managed by one of the companies that are just very not good at dealing with games, man. So Paladins, despite being handled by Hi-Rez, you know, they still get a healthy amount of heroes and updates, and there's always new stuff that's coming into the game. But unfortunately, the big asterisk that determines whether this game is at a risk of dying or not having any trouble dying yet is the company who's handling it. Because the gameplay is fun, competitive is good, the players are very dedicated, it's a very healthy environment. But if I see that Rogue Company shuts down, I would put this game into risk of dying. But because Rogue Company is still alive, I consider Paladins at a no problem, but just like at the very bottom of no problem. Shadowline was supposed to be the perfect game. This thing was supposed to do everything that Overwatch 2 failed to deliver. Fast-paced movement, different heroes, different abilities, competitive PvP with payload, conquest, domination, you know, all that good stuff that you find in Overwatch, plus a PvE roguelike experience where you go on expeditions with your friends and you go fight different shard enemies, because there's a whole storyline about these shard monsters. I don't really like remember the storyline at the moment, but you go on expeditions and you go on dungeons and you take on sector bosses for like loot, blueprints, resources, and at the end of every section, the game asks you, do you want to keep going on your expedition, or do you just want to evacuate with what you have? So the game had a really fun PvE experience for being a first-person shooter game that's also geared towards competitive PvP. The PvE side of it was actually really fun, but unfortunately this game came out while Overwatch 2 was announced. So Overwatch 2, they still had the promise of PvE, that of course was eventually scrapped. So people were really looking forward to everything that Overwatch promised, and unfortunately because of that, Shadowline got kind of sidelined. But I played my fair share of Shadowline and it was genuinely fun. The only issue that I have is that, you know, because it was a smaller company, the updates were coming a little slow, so people just didn't have the attention span or the patience to wait for the updates. There was also a lot of ping issues and server issues because it was a smaller company, and unfortunately you would get a lot of random disconnects, which, you know, in PvP, if you get disconnected in PvP, then whatever, you know, it happens, yeah, just log back in and keep going. But in the PvE expeditions, if you got disconnected, that's it. You lose all your progress, you lose everything. And these things could range between like 15 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on how long you want to go to. And after 45 minutes, you get randomly disconnected. Trust me, you're not going back in to keep playing the game. Looking at the concurrent player base and how many people are actively playing it, it's unfortunately a game that's on life support right now. Alright, so now to talk about Apex Legends. You're being gaslit into thinking you like this game. This is just like with Overwatch. This is coming from a guy who grinded Apex ranked for years. Trust me, even if you're not aware of it, you're being gaslit into thinking you enjoy this game. There's way better options out there, man. It is the best battle royale out there. It does have the most enriching story with the characters and the lore and the personalities, but trust me guys, it's not worth it. You're better off reading about Apex and keeping up with the updates versus actually playing the game. You don't want to deal with the toxicity. You don't want to deal with the people, the madness. You don't want to deal with any of that, guys. But unfortunately you will. That's the sad reality of it, and unfortunately because of that, this game is damn near unkillable at this point, so we're just putting it at the unkillable part of the tier list as well. Alright, so now this is a game you guys have probably never heard of, or if you have, it's because you're probably over 30 to 40 years old. It's called Quake Champions. It's an old school boomer shooter game that's been on life support for years now. This is actually one of the first games I started streaming on Twitch, and even though the game's not technically dead, it's dying, and every day it just keeps dying a little more, so this thing is just waiting to be put out of its misery at this point. Quake used to be one of the OGs in esports because it's a very fast-paced game, it's extremely competitive, and when Quake Champions released, this new series where you can actually play as different heroes with different abilities, there was a lot of press and marketing for tournaments being hosted and a lot of cash prizes being given out, but year after year the game just keeps, falling off even harder. Like there's barely anything going on with it right now. And this I think is because the fast-paced arena boomer shooter genre is just dying out and people are just, preferring to go with battle royales, which, everyone's playing battle royales these days. So I think it's just something that has to do with the shift in times versus, the game being bad, because the game, like I've said, I started streaming it and it's actually really fun, but it's not what the kids these days are playing. And it doesn't help that the game has like over 10 different game modes, so it's already splitting the very small player base that it has into so many different directions. The game is just, it's not dead, like I mentioned, but it is on life support. This thing is about to die. And lastly, we have Dirty Bomb. This game is a zombie at this point. It's been around for so long, since 2013, and it just refuses to die. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I got the chance to play the game and it was very fun, but I feel like it's just, in a world where there's so much competition for so many different hero shooters, this one seems kind of outdated. It's been running on maintenance mode since 2018, so there has been no innovation on it, but the game genuinely feels interesting. The concept is where you have your operators into little trading cards, and that's how you can have your loadouts ready, basically. And the game has payload, it has plant the bomb, it has attackers and defenders, your typical Counter-Strike-ish Overwatch kind of game. And fun fact, the game used to be called Dirty Bomb, and then people decided, the developers were like, let's call it Extraction instead. But then they decided to just go like, you know what, Extraction kind of cringe, and then just went back to Dirty Bomb. And I think that Dirty Bomb itself is just it's just a pretty weird name, to be honest. It's kind of funny. And if I have to give this game a rating, it's not dead, like I mentioned. It's on life support, just like so many other games on this tier list. But yeah, this is the entire tier list, guys. Let me know what you guys think, leave a comment, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.